Hey gamers, Blindy here. It's January 2024 and I recently just finished playing Islets. It's an indie Metroidvania and you may not have heard of this game, but if you're into Metroidvania style games, this is definitely one that might be worth considering. This game was developed by Kyle Thompson, a solo developer, and as far as I can tell, his only other game out there right now is a game by the name of Sheepo. It's another Metroidvania, and it looks very similar. The style of it is all designed very similarly. And if you're a fan of his work, like I am with this game, he has another game coming out later this year, at least that's planned to be, and it goes by the name of Crypt Custodian. Again, same art style, Metroidvania, so very similar. So if you're at all interested in this type of game, that is definitely something worth looking out for. This game originally released on August 24th, 2022 on the PC, Switch, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. If you're a PlayStation fan and you want to get your hands on this game, unfortunately, it's not available for PlayStation. I don't know why. So if you're at all interested in this game, I would suggest looking at some of the other platforms to try to pick it up on. It is also available on the Epic Game Store and GOG, so good old games. I played it on Steam, on my Steam Deck, and I played it on the normal difficulty. Now, if you're looking to pick this game up, it is available on Steam for $25.99 in Canadian dollars. But I was able to pick it up at 40% off. Looks like that's about the standard discount that you could get, which puts it at about $15.59 in Canadian dollars. Convert that as you wish. As far as the install size as well, it's only about half a gig, so it's really small, and basically it doesn't matter what you have on your hard drive right now, you should be able to fit it in. As far as the Steam Deck goes, it does say that it's unsupported, but as far as I could tell, looks like everything is actually verified. So the buttons are mapped correctly. You have your A, B, X, Y. You have your start and select equivalents. So the 3 lines button and the 2 rectangles button, those show up properly. Resolution was perfectly fine. The text was easy to read. So I had no problems whatsoever playing this on the Steam Deck, if that is something that you're interested in. So, in my opinion, I would say that it is a verified game. It just doesn't have that status on the Steam store. Now, as far as critical reception, we're looking at Metacritic showing high 70s to low 80s, depending on the platform. And on Steam itself, overall shows 95%. So generally, it is a very well-received game. I am a little bit curious why there's such a discrepancy between Metacritic and Steam. You're looking at about a 15-point difference. So my guess would just be simply that Steam takes a yes or no approach to getting their ratings in, as opposed to Metacritic, which gives you a much more graduated style of rating system. So it could be 1 to 10 or something like that, as opposed to Steam's just a yes or a no, which means that most people like this game, may not necessarily like it all the way to 100%. And the ESRB rating, for those of you interested, is an E10+. The only thing that should be at all concerning is fantasy violence, which is pretty much standard fare for almost any video game out there. So it's a pretty friendly game for little kids. For the time to beat this game, How Long to Beat has this game at around 7.5 hours for the main story, 9 hours for the completionist. Personally, it took me about 10 hours, and I usually trust How Long to Beat to be close, but it's almost never slower than my time, which makes me distrust their numbers a little bit. I assume that some of those numbers are from replays, so those replays could go a bit faster, bumping those times down a little bit. I completed it at 100%. It didn't take much longer than the actual game itself to get that 100%. So I would say that probably another half an hour or so on my game time was just finishing up to that percentage. So if I was to guess for most players playing for the first time, you're looking at about 9 to 10 hours or so to complete this game and possibly even get to 100%. Alright, so now I'm going to get into the gameplay a little bit. I'm going to give you a warning right now. I will do my best not to show any spoilers at all. This is a pretty story-light game, so there's not a whole lot to spoil, but I won't ruin anything for you guys as much as I can. I'm going to show some gameplay, some of the mechanics. I will talk about a little bit of the cutscenes and stuff like that. So I'm going to do my best not to show anything too important, but I have to show some stuff so you know what I'm talking about. So once again, if you don't want anything at all spoiled, this is your warning. As you can see on your screen, it's a Metroidvania. You control a character that explores various areas. You gain certain abilities, which then opens up access to different areas, and so on and so forth. So you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking, gaining more abilities, and searching out new areas to see what opens up from there. For example, in this game, the first ability you learn is the double jump, and that ability opens up more rooms to explore because you're able to access higher areas that were blocked off before. Now this game is really cool in its art style. It's hand-drawn as far as I could tell, so it reminds me of various other games like Bastion, if you're familiar with that game. Visual style is very similar to that, and I got kind of a sense of Cuphead, if you're familiar with Cuphead as well. Some of the sounds and the combat felt very similar to that, and some of those visuals as well. So you get things like those pink projectiles. Those really reminded me of Cuphead. As you traverse around this map, there are various upgrades that you could pick up. There are 60 in total, and they could do really minor things for your character, so you could increase the amount of arrows that you could hold, various things like that. And there's a bit of platforming as well, so there are parts of this that reminded me quite a bit of Celeste, and some of the movements that you gain and your motions to get around. So there's a bit of dashing and wall climbing and things like that. And there are some areas that are flying based. So there's some combat that is based on you flying a little flying copter essentially, and you shoot projectiles from there. And there are just a few bosses that you have to beat in that manner. You don't have to go through any of the map in that way. It's just these bosses that open up areas. So I found those to be kind of a nice change of pace. It was really nice to break up the standard, straight-up Metroidvania style of gameplay and go into a little bit more of a different style of combat. Alright, so the story itself, so you know what the heck I'm talking about. Your character is Iko, so I-K-O, and he is a mouse adventurer. Now, there's a floating island in the sky made up of 5 separate islets. In time, those islands drifted apart into 5 different islets. And your goal as your character is to go visit those islets and start up the generators. The generators, once they're powered up, will be able to gather those islets together and bring the island back whole again. Many adventurers have tried and are currently trying to do just that, but none of them have been able to do that so far. And on your journey, you meet some of those characters that are trying to do just that, trying to start up those generators and bring this island back together, and ultimately become famous in the meantime. And your greatest challenge is on the last island, Cinder Island, and there are 3 great beasts that are trying to prevent the islands from getting together. I don't think they really go into that story much at all, but just know that that is your ultimate goal, is to start up these generators and to destroy those 3 beasts so that you're able to get those islets back together. So essentially, that is the story. There's nothing too complicated about it. Pretty straightforward, and there's not much to spoil unless you consider that last part, but it's kind of a plot point that you can see coming a mile away. Alright, so as far as the gameplay itself, I found the controls to be a little bit floaty at the beginning. It felt like you're kind of sliding around a little bit. But that only took a few minutes for me to really understand how to control the character. So I'm not going to hold it against it. It's just the way that it's controlled, and it didn't feel too slippery later on in the game. It felt much more intuitive and natural as I got into the game. If you're a Metroidvania player, many of these abilities that you gain are quite standard. So like I said earlier, you have the double jump, you do get to climb walls, there's a ground pound ability, and there's several others as well. So it feels like very familiar type of abilities that you gain if you're into this type of thing. Personally, I'm not a Metroidvania person, so I don't play too many of them, but it still felt familiar to me. It felt like these are types of abilities that I would have expected from a game like this. So like I said, there are some flying parts, and it kind of touches into bullet hell. So you're just completely bombarded with various projectiles coming at you, especially in those flying boss stages. But you do get some of that as well in some of the other standard bosses. So there's a lot of stuff coming at you. There's a lot of dodging, and you have to do your best to stay alive while still inflicting damage. So those were actually quite a lot of fun. It's a bit hectic, but I quite enjoyed them. So once again, I played the game on normal. I didn't find the game exceptionally challenging in any way, except for those bosses. Those bosses were kind of tough. There were some sections at the end of the game that were a bit harder to move around and traverse across the island. So kind of depends on your ability to navigate puzzles and platform and stuff like that. Overall, I love the visual style. The colors really pop, and I think the various color palettes used for the different regions were very distinct and matched exactly what it needed to be. So I really liked the way that it looked, and I think the sound and the music in the game was very well done as well. I really enjoyed listening to the music. The music fit the mood of each area and the bosses and things like that quite well. So I really enjoyed listening to it. So like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Metroidvanias personally. I enjoy them enough, but not enough that I would actively go after them. But that being said, I think this is a really fun game as far as kind of a gaming palate cleanser. I'm currently playing a different game at the moment. It's a very long game, so it was nice to break that up with a game like this, where it was much more lighthearted. It was easier to just get in and have fun with a game without having to worry about a major story or anything like that. And the visual art style, the combat and stuff like that, it felt really light, is the easiest word I could say that gives you an idea as far as the way I felt playing the game. It was just really easy to jump in, play a bit, jump out, and just have a good time essentially. And like I said earlier, it's fairly easy to get to that 100% mark. And if you're able to do that, you unlock the game mode, Boss Rush, which is the main feature of this game, is to fight those bosses. The in-between stuff is okay, but realistically what you want to do is you want to face those bosses. So after you're done playing this game, you could enter this Boss Rush mode, and you just go from boss to boss to boss. And you're timed for it. It's graded on the difficulty level and how many times you die playing those bosses. And that's the one thing that really ups the replay value of this game. If it wasn't for that, I'd be less inclined to replay this game. I still might be willing to do that. But with Boss Rush, I could just go in, fight the bosses, heal up after each boss, and see how far and fast I can get through it. So I really like that mode, and it adds something to the game. Alright, so with all that said, let me give it a score. I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 11. That gives it about an 82% score. It is a bit short, which is alright, realistically. It's just that I'm not a huge fan of Metroidvanias, so it's not something that I'm going to want to play for a long period of time. And like I said, for me, it was kind of a palate cleanser, and I enjoyed playing it for a brief amount of time, but I don't want to play it for 40 hours in a row. Alright, that being said, if you want a little bit more, I'm going to show you a bit of the final boss fight right now. Alright, so I've covered pretty much everything in the game, but I'm sure I didn't cover everything. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, tell me what I missed, leave them in the comments below. And at this point, I'd like to thank everybody that is a patron. Just kidding, I don't even have a Patreon page, so I'm not thanking those people. But if you do want to get a hold of me, if you want to contact me, you want to discuss games, discuss your life or whatever, I don't really care. I could chat with you. Let's go onto Discord. I have an empty Discord channel, just waiting for people to join me. It's on the screen right now. It's in the description. Stop by. I'd love to say hi. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking some time to hear me talk about islets. And without you, I'm just a weirdo talking to a microphone. So thank you once again for listening, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Take care.